handsome man wakes up after a fun night with his girlfriend, who left him a bouquet of flowers. He also prepares for work after that. Arriving at the office, he finds nobody there. He goes out and sees the whole empty streets. Only abandoned cars and piles of clothes are left. A moment later, an airplane crashes down the city from behind him. Now let's begin. Paul is a projectionist working at a movie theater. While the guests are enjoying the newly released movie, there is a sudden blackout. Paul checks around with a headlamp. As he goes out of the technical room, the emergency lights are on a moment later. At this moment, he finds that everyone has disappeared. Only their clothes are left on the floor. Not just within the theater corner, it takes place around the mall. Paul runs into a security man with a flashlight in his hand. The two decide to investigate if this is a prank. As the security enters a shop, his flashlight is out of battery. When Paul manages to fix his headlamp, he learns that the security is gone too. Later, Paul's only light also goes out and a shadow takes him. Elsewhere, Rosemary encounters the same event in a hospital. She walks around with a lighter during the blackout. She finds a patient with his chest open in an operation room. He is in panic, not knowing what is going on. Next, the light power above goes off again, and Rosemary realizes he has vanished too. She cries harder, madly looking for her son Manny. In the morning, Luke, a reporter, wakes up near some candles. He calls out for his girlfriend's name Paige, but she's not home. Stepping on a pair of glasses, Luke now realizes something mysterious is happening. The downtown streets are completely empty with abandoned cars and clothing. A moment later, a plane crashes down from behind him. He returns to his workplace, but no one's there either. 3 days later, Luke is running around the street by himself. He gets in a car trying to charge his lighter and start the engine. To his disappointment, the car doesn't work. A man suddenly appears and begs Luke to let him in. But soon that man vanishes as his lighter turns out of fuel. Luke continues to hunt for whatever it takes to have a source of power. A baby girl holds a flashlight watching Luke from a distance, but she only keeps silent. After a while, Luke finds a bar run by a generator. Like the rest of the city, the bar is deserted. Luke takes a look around the basement and encounters James, the bar owner's son. James points the gun at Luke, threatening him to put the gun down. Luke calms the boy down and the two decides to befriend. James still believes his mother is at a church and will soon return. Luke explains that it is 11 in the morning but it is all dark, implying that the sun is no longer shining. Just then, Rosemary joins Luke and James in a bar, desperately looking for her son. After talking with the two, Rosemary reveals she has a bunch of layered necklaces in her backpack. She makes her way to the bar thinking her husband might take her son here. All of a sudden, they hear some yelling outside. The three hesitate to come and check on that man. Luke decides to run to the man alone. It turns out that the man is Paul, who is craving for help from a bus shelter. He is suffering from severe concussion. Luke manages to rescue Paul in the nick of time before the shadows can approach and take them. In a bar, Paul explains that he could have been taken by the darkness. His headlight luckily reactivated and he can return alive. He has stayed at the bus shelter that is run by solar energy for 3 days, hoping someone will find him. The four discuss what makes them survive in 3 days. Paul tells the group that during the time he was about to fade away, it was hard to breathe. Rosemary thinks this is a punishment for what they have done in the past. Luke becomes angry and starts to argue with Rosemary. At that moment, the lights become flickering, signaling the generator is running out of power load. The group immediately turns off some of the necessary devices in the bar. As the four gather around the generator, they find nothing can extend the generator's life. Paul turns freaked and pours his anger over the machine. He apparently needs medical help after the trauma. The group falls into despair for the way to get out of this madness. Paul collapses after that. Rosemary, a physical therapist, urges Luke and James to assist her in helping Paul. While Luke takes some ice as Rosemary's requested, he recalls the memory of the last 3 days. As he entered the TV station, he found a recording of his girlfriend Paige vanishing on air when the light went off. He also noticed a lie from a man in Chicago warning everybody that only people holding sources of light are protected against whatever is happening in the darkness. Getting back to the group, Luke tells them the truth why they survived. They were still lit when the power first went out. It is the light that saves them at the beginning. He warns the group that the shadows can trick people and advises them to only trust the light in their hands. As the generator is dying, Luke suggests leaving the bar as soon as possible. Luke thinks they should go to Chicago by a truck he noticed earlier. Rosemary claims that Poole needs to go to the hospital. She'll not go anywhere until she finds her baby. Even James doesn't want to leave as he believes his mother will come back. Luke tells him they'll stop by the church on the way to Chicago. James finally agrees, and lastly, they convince Rosemary to join them. James is assigned to stay behind with Paul. Rosemary and Luke go out to take the truck with some glow stick necklaces. They plan to push it back and connect it to the Jenny, giving it a source to start. The two adults try their best to push the car towards the bar. Meanwhile, Paul is slowly falling into coma. James says to shake and keeps him awake. Paul asks James to turn on a song for him. While the song is playing, the lights around the bar become flickering. The good song reminds James about his carefree day in a bar with his mother and people. Paul's health declines quickly. While James is in the bathroom, the light suddenly goes off. Paul manages to check on James and learns that he's gone, but luckily with no clothes left. He immediately looks for the boy. From the tunnel in the bar, he hears James calling to him from the other end and moves towards his voice. However, Paul realizes it is a dead tunnel with a brick wall at the end. Despaired, he collapses on the ground and watches the lights go off one by one until the darkness takes him. It's revealed that he's actually still on the pool table. James is still in the bathroom with his necklace while the lights went off earlier. He gets back to Paul and sees only his clothes abandoned. The lights continue to flickering, threatening little James. He tries to run away, unsure about his fate. Luke and Rosemary stop to rest after punishing the heavy truck. Luke's light turns dead. The little girl shows up again. Luke tries to go after the girl to save her, but he falls down unfortunately. Rosemary turns on the lights of a car, which saves them both from the dark. The two decide to look for more sources of light enough to bring a truck to the bar. They enter a clinic nearby and look for some light. The two can design a torch there. Rosemary decides to look for more alcohol to maintain the torch. While checking, she hears some baby crying. She runs out to check, and it is just an empty stroller. Luke chases after, but it is too late. Her clothes drop on the ground. Luke makes all of his efforts to push the truck to the bar while James uses any way he can to keep the Jenny running. Finally, the two rejoin at the bar. They quickly set up the Jenny to the truck as planned. After several failures, the two can restart the truck. Luke attempts to get out of the bar just as the shadows pour in. When the two pass the church, James gets out to find his mother. Luke tries to stop James, but the boy keeps chasing to the church. As the darkness almost grabs James, Luke crashes the gate and saves James. James again insists on finding his mother and he runs away. James finds his mother jacket on the floor. As Luke gets out of the car and walks to James, the car's batteries die. Luke vanishes too. In panic, James sits in the middle of the candles overnight. The next morning, James wakes up when the last candle blows off. The little girl appears again. She introduces herself as Brian, and she has survived thanks to a solar-powered flashlight. James tells Brian that her flashlight will soon die because the sun is no longer providing light. As they get out of the church, the children see a horse on the street. They decide to ride that horse to Chicago. The sun sets as the children leave the city. Like and subscribe to watch more videos like this, and don't forget to turn on your notification. That really helps my channel. Thanks for watching.